Friend of this program, Scott Jennings, has reached the end of the rope, I think. He's just done. His patience is worn thin. We've been waiting for this moment, right? He's got the patience of Job. Well, we're going to go on a little journey with Scott Jennings yesterday on various programs on CNN where he tried to do one simple thing: tell the truth. And the gaslighting that he was confronted with was unbelievable. We'll start with this one. One of my favorite gaslights of the past week when we talk about political violence in America has been all these people saying, well, look at Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. His home got torched, right? So it's on both sides of the equation. See, because Josh Shapiro is a Democrat. What they leave out is the fact that Josh Shapiro's home was burned down by an anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian dirtbag. And of course, Josh Shapiro is Jewish. But even Josh Shapiro doesn't say this out loud. I'll explain why he doesn't in a sec, but here's Scott Jennings speaking truth to idiots.
Jennings, I will note that the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, was someone who, when President Trump, somebody, was hit by a bullet in Butler, Pennsylvania, Shapiro stood up and denounced it in a clear, unequivocal way. Now he's saying we do the same thing here. Do you think that he's got a point?
Well, I think his point would be strengthened if he were honest today about who burned his house down. It was a Free Palestine leftist who came and burned down the governor's mansion. He left that out. He left that out of his tweet today. And he's talking about cherry picking political violence. And we're talking about where there might be political violence. The violence against the governor of Pennsylvania and his family came from the left. And so I think there's a rush by Democrats who want to be president in 2028 to try to turn. Somehow Donald Trump's friend gets shot, and now everybody wants to blame Donald Trump for it. I guess that's what you have to do to get elected president as a Democrat.
We are not doing that sitting here, okay? And Kate,
I'm
please
sorry.
go ahead.
Is that not what's happening? People are pointing.
The governor's point is that it doesn't matter where the violence came from.
I think it might. Shouldn't it matter the motivations of the people?
It should be condemned regardless. Is the entire point of his speech.
Don't you care about the motivations?
To sit here and suggest that somehow him not mentioning it was some sort of sleight of hand,
of course it
to try
is.
to make it seem like it was.
I don't think his political party would accept
it. You missed the entire point of what he was saying, and it's a message that's badly needed in this country at this moment.
Look, I think that if we cannot be honest, if I were him and somebody tried to burn my house down, I think I'd be honest about who did it and why they did it. And it would matter for people to know that, would it not?
Scott, is this not a let's rise above because anyone that is committing an act of political violence who is trying to kill someone else for what they believe in, it's like it is inherently wrong and awful?
Why are your two impulses mutually exclusive? Why can't we all say all political violence is bad, which I wholeheartedly believe, and also be honest when people have clear intentions? I think there's a difference between people that have clear intentions and, clearly deranged people. But in the case of Shapiro, and I think in the case of Charlie Kirk, we know the intentions, the political intentions of the people at play. And
all right, I'm going to let him finish, but I just want to jump in here and give a little bit of commentary because it's critically important. First of all, why doesn't Josh Shapiro just emphatically say, my house, I was targeted because I'm a pro-Israeli Jewish governor, and my mansion was targeted because of that by this anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas terrorist? Why can't he say that? You know why, right? Because he's a Democrat and he wants to be president. The reason Kamala Harris didn't choose him to be his running mate was because he's Jewish. And, he's a little too friendly with Israel, and that'll anger the base. If he wants a political future in the Democrat Party the way it is currently constituted, he cannot vociferously condemn the pro-Hamas dirtbags, even the guy who tried to murder him and his family. And that's the reality of where we are right now. And this whole idea is like, well, shouldn't we just condemn all violence? It's funny. Meredith and I have a running joke. My wife, Meredith, and I have a running joke in the family here. If I do something stupid, if I, let's say I drop a glass of wine on our carpet, right? And there's like a big wine spill and a stain on the carpeting. And we're both frantically trying to clean it up and keep the wine from staining. I use this as an example because it's a regular situation. I'm a sloppy drunk. Anyway, we're cleaning up the wine, and I'll look at Meredith and I'll say, and she'll give me a look, and I'll say, all right, now let's not get bogged down in who's to blame here. Let's not get distracted by pointing fingers. Let's just solve the problem. We say that as a joke because it's obvious that I'm going to be the first one to say, all right, now let's not get bogged down by assigning blame. That's a waste of time, to deflect the fact that I'm to blame. And that's what you're seeing right here. Or let's not get tawdry and bogged down and pointing fingers of blame here. There's enough to go around, right? It's just condemn violence, period. Because, that's literally an amoral statement. I condemn violence. You have shown no moral clarity at all. You have not even taken a moral stand. You have merely made a statement that you don't like violence because it's destructive. That's it. But this wasn't just random violence. It's funny. During Black Lives Matter, right? If you dared to stand up and say, well, how about all lives matter? How dare you? The very people at this panel who are now angry that, as Scott Jennings put it, the president's friend was murdered, and the president dares to say he was murdered because of this violent political faction in our country. They're angry at him for saying that, but those very same people would never let you say all lives matter. No. Oh, we really shouldn't paint with a broad brush. Really? Last I checked, you said that we have an inherently systemic, racist criminal justice system, and you painted all cops as potential murderers. Please don't tell me that you don't engage in this. We've just lived through years of this. You just don't like the fact that now you're on the receiving end of it. Rightly so.
When we sort of skirt around it and we're not honest about it, we let it off the hook. And I don't think we should let people with clear political intentions to commit violence off the hook. And so I like what he said about condemning violence. I just would like it a little more if we could just be a little bit honest about what happened at his house.
You would just like it if a politically critical message was applied to what he was trying to say. I mean, that's what you're saying, right? You're saying you like what he said in condemning political violence across the board, but it didn't work for you because you didn't try to get in a dig at whose fault it was. The entire point is that we have to condemn political violence from all sides, in all stripes, in whatever form. And I think the fact that we are sitting here even having this conversation is deeply, deeply problematic in terms of where the temperature is in the country right now. I think the fact that you would call him dishonest.
I agree that it is problematic that a prominent Democrat cannot be honest about who tried to burn his house down. I totally agree with you about that.
Cannot be honest. As if, did he misrepresent it?
He didn't mention it and has refused to say it.
I think the only person misrepresenting what he said today, Scott Jennings, is you.
All right. So that's how Scott's day started, by the way. It got worse for him. I'll be honest, or more accurately, worse for everybody who was on the panels with him. And we're going to show it to you. But I'll give you another example. You watch any NFL game that involves the Kansas City Chiefs, and you see that the referees do whatever they can to wrap Patrick Mahomes in bubble wrap and throw their little yellow flag anytime the opposing team does anything that is even considered a minor infraction of the rules, and even more so when there are no infractions of the rules, but they're going to throw that hanky to make sure that a penalty is called to help Patrick and help the Chiefs, right? It's obvious. Everyone knows it. It's just an inherent truth. And then the refs may get a penalty wrong the other way, and they'll throw a flag on the Chiefs. And then after the game, if Andy Reid, the head coach of the Chiefs, is asked about how the refs called the game, he'll say, well, there was blame to go around. They got it wrong on both sides of the equation. And that would be true. That would be accurate. They got it wrong on both sides. They got it wrong 20 times in favor of the Chiefs and once against the Chiefs. They got it wrong both sides. There's plenty of blame to go around. That's what we're living through right now with the both sides argument. And Jennings has had enough. So watch as this panel continues.
What I am not happy about is that we have the shooter's words. We know what he put on the bullets. It's very,
So Scott,
very clear what happened here. And there is a movement by some people to completely say, well, we have no idea.
Scott,
and we do.
Hold on. We have the floor. You can have the floor back. But here's the thing. I had to really struggle to understand all of the details are on those bullets. They are internet memes from video games that people way younger than us play.
Kasie Hunt, CNN, handsomely paid teleprompter reader, is a moron. And she just told you. She just admitted it. She's had a week to look at the evidence that we have known about this crime. And I gotta tell you, I'm stuck here. I have no idea if there was a motive here. I have no idea what those messages on the bullet casings meant. Somebody help me out here. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. And just imagine that. And I would venture to say that the vast majority of the people who are watching this program right now learned what was written on the bullet casings, and probably for 75% of the messages, you knew immediately what they were all about. For the couple of them that may have been memes, you did 1 or 2 basic searches to educate yourself, and you knew the details. Loud and clear. Kasie Hunt, professional teleprompter reader for CNN, hasn't bothered to do that. And openly admitted on the set of her own show, I don't know. I struggle to figure it out. So Scott Jennings is dealing with this, right? And then it got worse.
Where it starts to get concerning is when you have figures from President Trump on down who are trying to use this moment to suggest that there is inherent violence on the left, and that the government should be seeking out and rooting out these organizations, when we have no indication that this shooter acted at the behest of or through the organization of any of these groups. And I think when you start to bleed those two concepts together and create this notion that in this incredibly fraught moment, in the wake of this horrific shooting, when you foment the idea that we have to be at each other's throats politically, I think that's a dangerous place to be.
Why did I do it? I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out.
So can I ask you? So
he has
Scott, just explain what you just read.
That is the message that the shooter, Tyler Robinson, sent to his roommate. That is what he said. He also engraved the word, "Hey, fascist, catch," on the bullet. For 10 years, we have heard nothing from the left but that Donald Trump is a fascist. Republicans are Nazis, authoritarians, destroy the Constitution,
but that's
bloodbath,
so part of
dictator for a day. And he wrote it on the bullet.
So can I ask you?
And he's been obviously marinating in some kind of information that radicalized him based on what he heard in the air in this country.
So does the shooter who assassinated Melissa Hortman, who was a stated Trump supporter, whose roommate said,
are you trying to equate these two things?
Does he represent? Can you let me finish my thought, please?
Please.
We're talking about two people in politics who both.
I'm asking you, does that shooter represent the entirety of the MAGA movement? Of course not. I would never argue that. I don't think you would argue that. So why is it acceptable to use this moment to argue that somebody, a sick individual who committed a horrific crime,
how do you know he's sick?
Is somehow Are you here to argue for his sanity?
I'm here to argue. All I know is what the prosecutor said today. He read very lucid messages from a shooter who was motivated by political hate, who had a plan to get away with it. He did not sound like a deranged person. He sounded like someone who had decided to take it upon himself to rid the world of someone that he hated politically, that he thought that the world would be better off without that. That's different than some deranged lunatic showing up off the street.
His actions were horrific, but to assign the specific hateful, violent, awful actions of somebody on an individual on the right or an individual on the left,
I don't know that you're right about what happened in Minnesota.
The entirety of the political conversation is incredibly dangerous and irresponsible in this moment.
Well, I think it's dangerous and irresponsible for nobody to take responsibility for 10 years of the use of the language fascism, Nazi, authoritarian, so on and so forth. It's on the bullet case.
I have seen nothing but Democrats in the wake of this murder saying that it was awful.
You've seen nothing?
I have seen them
literally nothing.
Elected Democrats, I have seen them saying nothing but it was horrific, that they condemn it, that they are sorry for his family, that this is an awful moment in the country. I've seen President Trump do nothing but say it was the Democrats' fault.
Yeah, but you haven't seen any of this Democrat. Again, this is amoral. I'm not saying immoral. It's amoral to say, oh, what happened here is terrible and I condemn it. but you don't go that extra step and say, and we are partly responsible for saying the things that we've been saying about Trump and Republicans and conservatives and Charlie Kirk for decades, for over a decade. That they'll never say. By the way, I do love that CNN has an analyst sitting at their panel right there telling the jury pool in Utah that this murderer is insane. Did you catch that? She said, well, he's sick. He goes, how do you know she's sick? How do you know he's sick? And she said, oh, are you here to testify for his sanity? I'm sorry. Why are you giving him an insanity plea? Doesn't seem insane to me. He seems pretty meditated, premeditated, planned out, intelligent, coherent, cogent before, during, and after them. There's no evidence that he's insane. This is the problem in our country right now, that violence has been written off and excused in a very Marxist way, by the way, as being the direct result of two things, either economic problems and there didn't used to be a time in Western civilization where if somebody was a thief or a rapist or a murderer or a child predator, that they say, well, because of the economic conditions and the class system, how poor people, it's insulting to poor people, by the way, to suggest that because you don't live in a big house, you're going to go rape somebody. Or the other excuse is insanity. Well, clearly they must just be, out of their heads. Somebody who would murder someone, they must be crazy. No, actually, evil people can be quite sane. Murderers are quite sane. But that's where we are in this. Oh, and then, of course, the third excuse that is a more recent one is that people commit crimes and do horrible things because, there's racism in our society. After all, we had slavery 200 years ago. So what do you expect from somebody today? Which, again, by the way, is insulting. It's insulting and it's racist, by the way. But that's, again, just the early part of Scott Jennings' day. Then it came to prime time, and he had to square off with the likes of Montel Williams. And I just want to reiterate this because I've been talking about it for the whole week, but it needs to be made clear. Scott Jennings is not just some talking head on television trying to debate issues from a conservative perspective, okay? Almost every single one of us who do what we do for a living today, we knew Charlie Kirk personally, and in many respects, we're colleagues of Charlie Kirk. Both Scott Jennings and I are talk show hosts and podcasters for a company called Salem Media. Town Hall, which produces this program you're watching, is owned by Salem Media. Charlie Kirk's podcast was presented and distributed by Salem Media, and his radio show was on the Salem Radio Network. So when we have to face off against somebody like that woman on the panel, like the entire panel on CNN, and now Montel Williams, who say insulting and demeaning and horrific things about Charlie Kirk, and also try to present some sort of rationalization and excuse for his cold-blooded murderer. It goes well beyond just engaging in a political debate. You're insulting our colleague. You're insulting somebody that we knew personally who just got ripped out of our lives by an assassin's bullet motivated by your politics. So you would think a little bit of sensitivity would come to the table in these debates. But no, Montel Williams, while sitting across from Scott Jennings, decides to give this murderer not just a motive, but a beautiful, romantic, Jane Austen novel kind of motive.
Talking about a love-torn child, a kid. This is probably his first real relationship, and somebody was disparaging the person that he loved. He sat on that building for 30 minutes before he took the shot. Why did he wait until the first word trans came up? Then he took the shot.
You think he heard it? He could hear it?
I think he could hear it. I think he also, I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally.
Guys, the evidence here is overwhelming. He said, Charlie Kirk, I can't stand this hate anymore. I'm going to take him out. The testimony from him and the statements of his family, he had become more left wing. He etched the statements that are made by the left about Republicans and conservatives and Charlie Kirk fascists on the bullet casings.
He made a joke about it in his last text.
Well, it doesn't sound like a joke to me because someone's dead and about to be buried.
Well,
So it doesn't
Those are
sound
two
like a joke to me.
Those are
I mean-
two
So I'm just telling you, there is an effort. There was an effort all weekend long on the left to try to make this guy sound like he was a conservative. That failed. That was passed around all over the weekend. That has now failed. The evidence has now come out. He was motivated by hate. He was motivated by left-wing radicalism. He got mixed up with some trans ideology in his life. We'll learn more about that, I'm sure, when more evidence and testimony comes out. We are looking around the edges of this for something other than what's staring us in the face. Left-wing radicalism got this kid. He went up to a roof and he murdered our friend, and that's what happened.
Now, you can tell that Scott Jennings is starting to get a little angry, and understandable. I've shown you what his entire day has been like. And understand what Scott Jennings keeps doing. He just keeps coming back to the truth, to the facts, to the evidence here. And you're hearing every other kind of possible motive, including Montel Williams. This was just a lovesick guy who was he was just angry that somebody was insulting his love. And so just like Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff coming and trying to, I'm seriously. So Scott Jennings starts to get a little angry. And then Montel Williams made a big mistake. He started to mock Scott Jennings for his passion. And, well, watch.
Please, for 1 second, understand that as we continue, Scott just got all angry, got real mad. Face it, it's got to be this, it's got to be this, it's got to be this. Why can't we have a discussion about how long is it going to take for us
Yeah,
to
by the way,
figure
I
out a
am
way to
angry.
come back
Just
together?
to be
Hold on a second.
clear,
Can
I
we-
am angry.
Can we just let him finish
I
his
am
thought,
angry.
Scott? I'll let you
Because
talk.
I knew it.
Scott,
I am
I'll
angry.
let you talk in just a second. Go ahead.
Could we spend as much time figuring out how we bridge this and come back together again? You know, I used to have a note on my producer's desk when I did my show that was said, we don't belabor what happens. We try to figure out why it happens and come up with solutions. Right now, all we're doing is belaboring what happened over and over and over and over again. We're not going to sit down and try to figure out how do we stop it. If we
You
want to
got to go
stop
after
Clueless,
left-wing terrorists. That's actually exactly the conversation we're having, is we're acknowledging there's a problem.
so anybody who disagrees with
So
you is a
there's
left-wing terrorist.
Absolutely not. But if they target a conservative and murder him in brutal fashion, he's
Let
probably
me
a
answer
left-wing
your
terrorist.
Sure.
question.
Yes, that
You
person is a murderer.
you said-
We can all acknowledge that.
You said I'm angry. I am angry, and I'm just telling. I am channeling the emotions of millions of conservatives who are angry. They knew Charlie. They loved Charlie. They viewed Charlie as a mainstream conservative Republican voice who talked about issues that millions of Americans believe. He also talked about his faith. And he did it by going to college campuses, which are not normally hospitable to conservatives, and offering his opponents a microphone to have what we always
In
say.
support of what?
to
In
have
support of what?
Civil
So-
discourse.
Not only that, but support of the First Amendment.
And
He
guess
made
what?
sure
He-
that people had an opportunity
guess
to
what?
stand
He
in
was-
a room and talk.
he was murdered trying to do what we always say. Why don't we talk to each other? So yes, it's not even been a week. So you're going to have to give us a little grace on being angry about somebody who did what you always say that we should do. Let's talk.
We didn't
And he
get much
got killed.
grace over. Did
And he
we
got
get more
killed.
than a week's grace over
So
two Michigan elected officials who were murdered?
Minnesota.
Did we give? Was it
Well-
3 weeks before we decided to say that there was something wrong with Speaker Pelosi's husband being hit in the head with a hammer?
by a homeless drug addict? I mean, it was terrible that happened. This is not the same kind of case.
Yeah, thank you, Newsbusters, for the clip. And I'm glad that Scott and most of us are no longer taking the bait on those straw man arguments. By the way, it was Minnesota, Montel, not Michigan. Thank you very much. And there's no equating those crimes, as you know. By the way, we shouldn't be too hard on Montel Williams because, I mean, I don't think he's got the best judgment in the world. Let's not forget, many years ago, he was shtupping Kamala Harris. And honestly, I don't see how any man could be the same after that. Something broke big time. And then this happened on CNN. Abby Phillip, as usual, with the chef's kiss.
I think it's representative of a large part of the left. And I say that because look at the reaction we have seen from the left. They are cheering. They are celebrating his death. You have outlets saying Charlie Kirk shouldn't have died. but he said some pretty hateful things, as if they're on some moral high ground to say
But I
that.
wonder,
That-
have you seen any evidence of any prominent mainstream Democrats doing what you just described?
There's a Democratic
Celebrating-
state senator in Connecticut.
Celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. Did
Except this is
anybody
the name.
I can't
actually
think of the name. It's called
celebrating?
You can't think of the name?
I saw it on Twitter yesterday.
Okay,
But
I
you
know what
can't
you're
think of the
talking.
name.
Hold on. I know what you're talking about because I've seen it too. He did not. In fact, he started that tweet saying that Charlie Kirk should not have been killed. So,
And
do you
then
have
gave a
any
caveat.
evidence of mainstream Democrats celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder?
It does not need to be a mainstream top dog Democrat when the majority of the comments online from the left have been celebratory or cheering on political murder.
Majority
How do
of the
you know it's a
comments-
Half
majority?
a million likes on a tweet is a lot of people. That is
Okay,
not a
500,000
fringe or an
on a
outskirt.
there's like 7 billion people on social media today.
Yeah.
Half a
And-
million
and ma- and
people.
about
I
half
could
a
have
million
a
on
million
social-
Can I
About
ask
half
You
of
and
people
I
on
get
social
half a
media,
million
by the way,
on
are not even real people. So I do think we have to kind of,
But
the
can I-
internet is
I mean,
not real
Can I
life.
ask
is
though?
part of what this
Everybody
is,
here
right?
acknowledges that there have been thousands upon thousands of people, ordinary people, who have taken to social media to celebrate this. Yes or no?
I don't know about that.
You know,
A,
I
I don't know.
I was
And
gonna
I
say,
have
high school
hold on,
friends
hold on.
who are.
You know,
Scott,
I
hold on a
think it is-
second. Hold
it
on.
is
I just think we
horrible.
should just, we got to be factual about this, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you know the scope. I don't know the scope. But I do think that we have to distinguish between random people in the world and something that is a dominant
Why?
issue.
Because the person who
well,
shot Charlie
it's
Kirk was a
random.
random
Hold
person
on.
in the world,
Well,
was
no.
he not?
Well, here's the thing.
That's the
thing.
danger.
There have
You
been-
dismiss the
there
random
have been
people of the world.
political-
They have
There
access
have been political
weapons
assassinations
and
in
hateful
this country.
motivations.
There
Well said, Scott Jennings, and that is the only way to shut down that line of. Well, prominent. I mean, Barack Obama hasn't celebrated. Barack Obama doesn't have to. He can stay above the fray and do this like he likes to do, because he knows that he's got his armies of brainwashed Obama bots out there who are going to do his bidding for him. That's the beauty of being a political leader. And again, I assure you, and we don't even have to be hypothetical about this. I assure you that over the course of the last 10 years, if anything, even the slightest thing happened that had fingerprints of a conservative, Trump-loving Republican on it, the reaction to random anonymous people celebrating whatever that action was would be fodder for cable news conversation. But now if you bring it up from the other perspective, let's not go there. We can't quantify these things. There's no way to know for sure. It's just absolutely remarkable, the gaslighting that is going on here, that continues to go on here, as they're not just in denial, they are literally going out of their way to lie about this. Scott Jennings, by the way, after that exchange right there, where his colleagues on that panel refused to admit that thousands upon thousands, if not millions, of people on the left were celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk, he decided to take that clip that we just saw, and this morning he put it on his X account and said last night an entire table doubted the thousands of online celebrations of the left over Charlie Kirk's murder. Seems like folks need an education. Let's compile a long thread here so they're forced to see and accept the truth. We're looking at over 1,000 comments right now. Yeah, this guy slapping his neck and then mocking Charlie Kirk. Those are college students, by the way, in good standing. Not him anymore, by the way. He's been expelled. Just look, over 1,000 comments. And as I constantly say over and over and over again, the people who read teleprompters on CNN are not aware of the news. They don't follow the news. They don't know the news. They don't know that this is happening. They don't know or choose not to know or go out of their way to be willfully ignorant about what's really happening in our country. The fact that Abby Phillip and that panel could sit there and say, well, we don't know. You're overstating it. There aren't thousands of people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. Look at the replies here in just over the last hour. Just wait till this gains steam. I can keep scrolling and scrolling, but we've got more news to get to. But that was Scott Jennings' day yesterday. We love Scott Jennings. He's our friend. He's our colleague. Check out our interview with him from 2 weeks ago. It's right here on the channel. Let me just say, if you like Scott Jennings as much as we do, keep him in your prayers, because honestly, I don't know how he does it, and I don't think any of us could do what he does, and it's getting harder and harder.